Good morning. Welcome to Thrive Here Live with the Town of Huntersville. I am Mayor Christy Clark, and I am joined today by Representative Beth Helfrich, who represents House District 98. That comprises the towns of Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me, Mayor Clark.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I'm just going to dive right in. You are a first-time legislator. What's it been like? What were some surprises or unexpected things that have happened while you've been there?
This is a great question, and one I get asked a lot, not surprisingly. I would say the surprises happen every day. Every day is a new day with lots of opportunity for the unexpected to pop up. I would say the most pleasant surprise has been the congeniality that I experience in the chamber and in the legislature itself. There's a real warmth and camaraderie. And I'll just sort of acknowledge right out of the gate that this weekend was pretty rattling for folks serving in state legislatures and folks serving locally too. The horrific attack in Minnesota. I now have a clearer picture of what a 20-year state rep, like who steps into that kind of role and who commits to that kind of work. And regardless of party, you genuinely see people who are dedicated to their communities, who are trying their best. You know, their views are shaped by their upbringing and where they're from in the state and their respective districts. But there's a real warmth and professional accord for which I'm very grateful. So that's been a pleasant surprise. The wild ride of following bills and committees and I say now we're in whack-a-mole season where the different chambers are tossing over bills that look totally differently than the way they started. That is a surprise too, but it's also fun and keeping me on my toes and just means that I've got to be as prepared as I can.
Yeah, when I was there, what I experienced was just a great family atmosphere. My mom passed away while I was there, and so the entire house rallied around me for support, and that was something that was unexpected, but happy to see that when the times get tough, everyone sticks together, and I think that's probably going to continue to happen, especially after what happened in Minnesota.
Yes, there is a real family vibe, and there are a lot of folks up there who are working around the clock that we never see or hear from. The staff, the legislative assistants, all of the professionals who are a part of that family, who are doing behind the scenes work to crank the wheels of government.
Yeah, they really make the place run, and they are so smart and talented. It's such a blessing to have people like that who are willing to do that work.
Yes, for sure.
I know you get this question a lot too. What does your day look like? I know the answer, I think, but I'd love to know what does your day look like on a typical day, which that there really isn't such a thing in the General Assembly, but
it's a real mixed bag, which again, for someone like me, I love that. But typically, let's say a Tuesday. Tuesdays are usually the longest days for me, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So I usually take the train up on Monday nights. And then Tuesday morning could start as early as 7:30 with a breakfast. There are often different advocacy groups or lobbyists whose firms or agencies, they'll host a breakfast for legislators just to have a chance to learn about something that you might not know about. So I really value those, and I try to attend as many as I can. And then you might have, my first committee meetings on Tuesdays usually start at 8:30. Depending on the committees you're on, your committee meeting could be short and quick or go on for an hour or so. My legislative assistant usually has multiple meetings scheduled mid-morning with folks who are up in the building to advocate. So could be people from my district. That's my favorite, when local folks come up and schedule a time to see me in person. It could be folks from a statewide organization who just want to make sure that I understand their legislative priorities. Those are usually quick meetings, 15 to 20 minutes. I get sort of shepherded from one to the other. And committee meetings will last until we caucus. So each party has moments on the calendar where they're all getting together in a room behind closed doors and talking through legislation. We caucus and then we hit the floor. So we have votes every Tuesday at 4 p.m., Wednesdays at 1 p.m., and sometimes on Thursdays. I think we're going to have a Thursday vote this week for sure. So after votes, there's usually a reception of some kind. We're here again. You're hearing from people about their priorities or the work that they do. So I often don't get back to where I'm staying until 9 o'clock at night. So a typical day in Raleigh goes hard from 7 to 9.
Yeah, it is a hard day. Now, what committees are you on? I forgot.
I am on appropriations. So everyone is either on finance or appropriations. Finance sort of determines where the money's going to come from, and appropriations determines where the money gets spent. And then my subcommittee for appropriations is transportation, which is, of course, super relevant to what's happening here in our district and our district priorities. I am on the higher education committee, so everything post K-12, which has been awesome. I've gotten to learn a lot about North Carolina's impressive public university system, of course, sort of our what we call our crown jewel, but also our community college system, our HBCUs, and our independent colleges and universities. And there are several of each of those around here. So so that's been a treat. And I sit on the full title is Homeland Security and Military and Veterans Affairs. So the short one is MVA.
Yeah. Well, you brought up transportation and traffic as something I know that we both get asked a lot about what are we going to do about the traffic in North Mecklenburg? How are we going to fix these roads? So you have any updates for us on the transportation project we have going that everyone's talking about, and it's been the hot topic for a year now?
Yes. So what Mayor Clark's alluding to is the potential for a referendum to be put before voters as early as this fall that would allow voters to choose whether or not to approve a 1-cent sales tax increase. The funds from which would go to transportation projects specifically. And this has been the legislation that's been filed in Raleigh. So there's House legislation, the PAVE Act, and then there's a Senate piece of legislation as well. Both are the result of a lot of, years of hard work and collaborative effort between local officials, folks who are on the broader transportation group that makes a lot of these decisions and tries to incorporate input from all of the respective towns and communities, but also legislators. So in North Carolina, the state legislature has to grant communities approval and counties permission to be able to do that. And so there are a lot of people working hard to get this legislation through the finish line so that we can put this before the voters, because we are at a point where we really do need more options for solutions. And so the funding that this would create would, of course, some of that would go toward the red line, but a big chunk of it would be distributed to towns to do to tackle their own road projects and to bus system as well.
All right, we will pick back up with talk of the red line and the sales tax when we return. But for now, we have a little break and some messages from our sponsors.
Sit tight. We'll be back with more after this on WSIC 105.9, 100.7, 1400 AM. Local starts here.
Well, the summertime heat and humidity are going to be sticking with us as we kick off a new work week. In fact, we should probably say they're on the increase. Temperatures climbing up a bit, even approaching the low 90s by the time we get to the end of the work week. Humidity going to creep up a little bit more too, but our storm chance actually coming down a little bit. We'll still have that chance for a few pop-up showers or thunderstorms pretty much each afternoon. They'll be hit or miss, not getting one every day. Just keep an eye on the weather. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. The 500 Club in Statesville presents golfing and bartending this weekend. On Friday, there is a mixology class, and on Sunday is a 2-person team 9-hole tournament. Visit the 500 Club online for more information on events, food, beverages, and tea times. Symphony in the Park is back this Saturday in Cornelius. Coming out for an evening with the Charlotte Symphony under the stars at the Bailey Road Park Band Shell. Enjoy music, food trucks, local beer and wine, children's activities, and more. The evening wraps up with a fireworks display. Symphony in the Park begins at 6 p.m. Saturday at Bailey Road Park in Cornelius. The Cookout Summer Shootout Series is at Charlotte Motor Speedway for race number 4 on Tuesday, June 24th. It is NASCAR night presented by the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Head to Gate 4 at the Speedway for their weekly promotion. Wear your favorite NASCAR driver gear on June 24th and get $5 off admission pricing. Click on charlottemotorspeedway.com for more information. The Exchange Club of Mooresville presents the annual Field the Flags July 2nd through the 5th at Lowe's YMCA. The field commemorates our veterans, service members, and first responders. The summer celebration featuring a ceremony, a concert by area favorite Blue Monday, and fireworks will be held on July 3rd. Flags are on sale now. Visit MooresvilleLKNExchange.org to make your purchase and for more information about the Field of Flags and the summer celebration, July 3rd at Lowe's YMCA in Mooresville. To keep up with all the events happening around the community and much more, including amazing local deals, download the WSIC News app today.
Swing for hope at the Next Chapter Station Golf Classic on September 22nd at the 500 Club in Statesville to help bring hope and comfort to children fighting cancer. Your support helps us deliver the book Luke and the Lost Bell to 1,000 hospitals. For more information, visit nextchapterstation.org.
Welcome to the world of digital technology at ClearSmile Orthodontics in Birkdale Landing. The Light Force braces system and Invisalign have proven to be more accurate and faster than stock metal braces. Book a free consult online at clearsmilecharlotte.com.
Every child deserves a safe, nurturing home, and every parent deserves support. Barrow's Parenting empowers families across the Lake Norman region with the tools, guidance, and care they need to thrive. Through education and resilience-building programs, they're breaking cycles and creating brighter tomorrows. Lake Norman Woman is proud to support and recognize Barrow's Parenting as one of the nonprofit organizations impacting our community at the Lake Norman Woman of the Year Gala presented by Optimed, because strong families build strong communities.
All right, we're back with more from the Town of Huntersville on WSIC 105.9, 100.7, 1400 AM. Local starts here.
Welcome back to Thrive Here Live with the Town of Huntersville. I'm Mayor Christy Clark, and I'm joined by Representative Beth Helfrich. We were just left off with talking about the PAVE Act legislation and what it will do for the red line possible development. And let's see, where were we?
Well, so just getting to that legislation, I was saying, is a real testament to a lot of hard work from a lot of different folks across sectors and levels of government. And the basic timeline now is that already passed the Transportation Committee in the House. Next, it will go to Finance. Just got the good news that it's on the calendar for the Finance Committee tomorrow. After that, it should come to the floor soon before the, in theory, the end of the long session, which is June 30th, and would have to then go to the Senate and do the same. So time is of the essence to sort of help shepherd that piece of legislation across the finish line in Raleigh. And for folks here on the ground, for your constituents, my constituents, our collective constituents, I should say, you all will hear much more about this once that legislation passes, because at that point there will be a public hearing to make sure that the referendum even gets put on the ballot by across the county, and then leading up to Election Day, you will certainly be receiving a lot of information about exactly what these funds would do and where they would go, and then voters get to choose. They get to decide yes or no. But there are a lot of stakeholders who are really championing this piece of legislation and who are championing the referendum itself. So it's going to get noisy come November, as things often do.
Yeah, and this bill, will bring about $11 million extra transportation dollars to the town of Huntersville. So in the event that it passes, people complain a lot about the orange barrels in Huntersville, but there will probably be even more if we get additional funding to help complete some roads, which is a really good thing for the town in the long run.
Sure. I mean, I sit on the Appropriations Transportation Committee, and I will say across all divisions right now in North Carolina, revenue is a challenge. And of course, the dramatic impact fiscally of Hurricane Helene and the cleanup. The state is doing its best to address those needs without impacting other work that needs to happen to keep the state running. But if you look at transportation, for example, just the repair and the rebuild that is ongoing in Western North Carolina, those funds have to come from somewhere. And so I think it's an important time for communities and for our state to be thoughtful and creative with how we are resourcing the necessary projects. And our district, North Mecklenburg, Huntersville, of course, is growing rapidly. And we face challenges that, we often say these are good problems to have. People are moving here consistently. They love living here. We have thriving small businesses and companies that are relocating here. All of that is wonderful, and we have to make sure we have infrastructure in place to support it before the pain point gets to be so much that people don't want to live here anymore. And so I would say, yes, this was the issue I heard about the most when I was knocking doors and running and asking folks over and over again, what do you care most about? What do you need from the state? And the buildup on our roads is an issue. And so this would allow for some more flexibility with how we tackle it.
Yep. I'm looking forward to that happening. We didn't even talk about this being your first budget season in the General Assembly, which I remember was just as hectic and crazy, and that they would print out for us every day big stacks of the budget that I eventually used to hold up my monitor on my desk because they were so tall. How did that go? What do you think?
Yes, every phase of this has been like, okay, so this is what this feels like. We are still technically in budget season, although my part for the time being is done. And it was, I would say, I felt pleasantly surprised that the budget had fewer things tucked in it. I'm used to watching what happens from afar in our legislature, and the last several cycles, there's been a lot of policy caked into the budget, and the Senate it alternates each biennium, every 2-year term, which chamber the budget starts in. And this year, the budget started in the Senate, so it came to the House second. The Senate had already released its budget by the time the House version was released, and just looking at the two side by side. Fundamentally, there were several things that I felt that the House budget did a better job of. Now, I serve in the minority party. We are often just responding to the agenda of the majority party and responding to legislation that's moving because the leadership gets to decide what moves. And the same goes with the budget. And so really it was about responding to the proposed budget. And Democrats ran a series of amendments within appropriations committee itself. A few of them were adopted. I think ran 47 amendments on the floor, and just a couple were adopted on the floor, which is not surprising. Most things are decided by the time they actually come to the floor, which is interesting. I ended up voting in favor of the budget. This House budget had the most, I think, bipartisan support of a budget in many years. It is not the final version, but I felt like it was there were enough good pieces in there. Raising beginner teacher pay from the current level to $50,000 by 2027 to me is a big win. Mm-hmm. Reinstating master's pay for teachers, that would be a big win. And perhaps most critically, the House budget pumps the brakes on some of the automatic tax breaks that are previously baked into statute. And listen, I'm for tax relief for working families. House budget also included reinstating the tax-free back-to-school weekend, which really helps working families like mine, and across the district. When you want to be able to support local businesses and stores with your back-to-school purchases, and like I said, revenue is a challenge, and especially given the uncertainty about federal funding right now and the potential cuts, I felt like it was very responsible and prescient that the House budget raises the trigger point for the next round of those cuts. So cast my vote for it. It is not the final budget. Now it has gone into negotiation between the House and the Senate behind closed doors. There's a special appointed committee. But there are also big cuts and losses in the budget. And we've heard from really good organizations and programs that are doing incredible work in our communities who are worried about what either proposed budget would do for their ability to serve constituents. And so I encourage people to, the nonprofits in your community that you get support from state grants or federal grants. Ask them how they're doing, and be willing and ready and able to step up and advocate for that inclusion in the budget by reaching out to the committee members or to me directly.
Yeah, the nonprofits in our community, especially North Mecklenburg, do a lot for our community up here and for the people who are disadvantaged. And so they definitely need our support all the way around, no matter what season it is, if it's budget season or not.
Right. Yes. And so, ideally, I'll give you an example. There was a pilot program called Healthy Opportunities that launched not here, but in Western North Carolina and Eastern North Carolina, really kind of a first of its kind pilot program that allowed the use of Medicaid funding to support these sort of pro-health on-the-ground operations. So food, housing, wraparound resources that ultimately create healthier outcomes in the long run, saving money because the need for medical intervention goes down. That was cut in this budget, and it's been so successful that this is a model that they're replicating in other states. And so, there are always trade-offs when it comes to a finite, limited amount of funds. And so there are people who are advocating for programs like that to find their way back in.
And my good friend Elaine Powell always talks about those funds that are in the budget as the dust that's left over at the end that you kind of scrape into a little pile and you hope you can find a good place for it. But it's not very much. And so it's just a little pile that you sometimes can give away to nonprofits. I think that's such a good example or good like metaphor for what is left over at the end of the budget. It's just a little pile you sweep up and hope for the best.
into the little dustbin. Yeah. And I will say, to underscore what I said earlier, given the projected revenue from already predetermined tax cuts and the impact of Helene, which is, again, seismic, the dust is not, there's not a big pile of dust. Yeah. And so, like I said, there are fewer dedicated kind of amounts to different groups or organizations or nonprofit in this budget than there have been in previous years.
Yep. Well, stay with us. We'll be coming back after a little break and a message from our sponsors.
Sit tight. We'll be back with more after this on WSIC 1059 100.7 1400 AM. Local starts here.
Well, the summertime heat and humidity are going to be sticking with us as we kick off a new work week. In fact, we should probably say they're on the increase. Temperatures climbing up a bit, even approaching the low 90s by the time we get to the end of the work week. Humidity going to creep up a little bit more too, but our storm chance actually coming down a little bit. We'll still have that chance for a few pop-up showers or thunderstorms pretty much each afternoon. They'll be hit or miss, not getting one every day. Just keep an eye on the weather. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
For 42 years, Johnson's Parts and Supply has been your Auto Plus auto parts store. When you need auto parts, think Johnson's Parts and Supply. Your Auto Plus auto parts store, 1112 Shelton Avenue, Statesville.
Are you sick of running out of hot water? Whether it's in the middle of a shower or doing dishes, cold water's never fun. Say goodbye to those surprises with a Rinnai tankless water heater from GMV Energy. This energy-efficient propane-powered solution heats water instantly, so you'll never run out again. Plus, it saves money and frees up space. Propane models start at just $295 after rebates. Visit any G&B Energy location or gbenergy.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Bob McIntosh with the McIntosh Law Firm in Davidson. Since 1997, we have been committed to providing our clients with competent, caring, and experienced legal services. Learn more at McIntoshLawFirm.com.
Inspire your team and gallop to greatness. Our horses at Willow Equine are outstanding at working with people on leadership and team building skills, perfect for corporate retreats. Visit willowequine.com as you gallop to greatness.
Have you taken the Desco Challenge? Desco is where the professional goes for electrical supplies.
My name is Ashley. I just redid the lighting in my home, and the customer experience at Desco was second to none.
See for yourself at DescoInc.com.
24/7 worldwide, non-stop.
WSIC.
Local starts here.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. As the nation's job search gets flooded this time of year with new college grads, right now is a tough time to be a young job seeker. Dow Jones analysis of Labor Department data find just a 2.2% unemployment rate among college-educated U.S. workers aged 35 to 44, but that rate triples to 6.6% among college grads 20 to 24. In May and so far here in June, Wall Street has largely bounced back following its aggressive selling, mostly from mid-February to mid-April. But what's come up could go right back down again. That's the warning today from RBC Capital Markets, which says the S&P 500 could fall 20% if ongoing Mideast fighting creates major oil market disruptions and renews worries about the health of the consumer. Right now, though, we're seeing oil down and stocks up amid hope that the Israel-Iran attacks don't escalate. Right now, the Dow and S&P 500 are each gaining 1%, NASDAQ up 1.5%. Oil futures down almost 4%. Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Home of the best talk.
WSIC. Local starts here.
All right, we're back with more from the Town of Huntersville on WSIC 105.9, 100.7, 1400 AM. Local starts here.
Welcome back to Thrive Here Live with the Town of Huntersville. Mayor Christy Clark and I have my good friend, Representative Beth Helfrich here. While we were on the commercial break, Representative and I were just talking about the camaraderie and the tone of Raleigh and how when I was there, it was a little more adversarial and people were willing to vote on principle and pick fights. And it seems like from the outside that that's not happening anymore. Is that true?
Well, I wasn't there when you were there, so I can't compare. But I do think I think that there are some showdowns happening, but they are happening more quietly and behind closed doors. So there will be a significant showdown between the two chambers over what the finalized budget looks like. And we have some changes in Raleigh now. There's a new Speaker of the House who's working to establish his footing as the leader in that chamber, and the leader in the Senate is facing a primary challenger. So there are just some interesting dynamics at play. But from where I'm sitting, I think I do think there's a genuine, earnest effort to try to work collaboratively and to try to be responsive to the state's needs. Now, that does not mean that the session has been free of partisan bills, messaging bills, but also some hot ticket issues that have passed one chamber or the others. There have been a few very heated debates on the floor about some of those issues, and a few bills that are now sitting on Governor Stein's desk that we are waiting to see whether he will veto those bills. And that will present an interesting challenge for House Democrats then to see if they can sustain any veto. So we will have plenty of fights to come. But I will say, I do think there's, and I don't know if it's because the very first piece of legislation that we passed was hurricane relief, but it was a good framework, I think, or at least a good opportunity for us to start with the clear and established purpose that we are there to serve the state. And there is still so much work to do in Western North Carolina. The House has passed unanimously another relief bill. The Senate put hurricane relief into its version of the budget. So that's another sort of, I don't even want to call it a fight. It's just a difference of strategy. And so we're waiting to see if the relief bill that we passed, which sought input from all of the Western legislators, including the Buncombe delegation, which is made up of Democrats, from people on the ground, small business owners, nonprofit directors, people who are doing the work. It's a good bill and necessary. And so I think there is this earnest effort to try to get things done and show that the state government is still trying to serve its people.
Yeah, and I think that set a good tone for the session as well, to have pass something that everyone agreed on and everyone knew was urgent and desperately needed. So it's good to see those kinds of things happening in Raleigh.
Yes, especially like in the context of, there have been, like I said, some bills that many North Carolinians, including many people in our district, do not think is necessary legislation. And so there are some bills that pass unanimously, and there are some bills that pass on partisan lines. Yep. But I will say that debate for the most part on the floor has been very civil. One of the most interesting things for me has been seeing the difference between debate inside the chamber and how we talk about issues, and then how they are talked about in social media. And it's very, very different. And so, and it's really sad to me, because I see how in the messaging piece of it and in the politicized piece of it, issues are manipulated or changed or talked about in a way to try to elicit a certain response from constituents. And that, more than almost any specific ideology itself, it's that piece of it that makes me so angry on behalf of North Carolinians and on behalf of people in the district, because we can talk at length and argue at length about the right way government should respond to issues. And we can talk about whether issues are, whether we're seeing them in the same way or not. I think those conversations are really, really important. But to then turn around and sort of try to oversimplify them or use them for political fodder is really frustrating. And I'm trying not to let that piece of it cheapen my experience of actually working in the legislature. But sometimes it just means that I'm just not going on social media, like not reading the comments, not looking at what memes are put out or how things are talked about, and trying to just do my best job to deliver and report back to my constituents in a way that feels truthful, clear, and honest. So my priority has been, I try to send a weekly newsletter. It's a great way for people to stay connected to what's happening in Raleigh, but also to my work. You can sign up for that. And I try to keep it as factual and matter of fact as possible, so that people feel like they have someone who is going to be a trustworthy reporter of what's happening back to the district.
Yeah. When those kinds of things happen, you always kind of feel like the folks that need our help the most get lost in the shuffle of that conversation and the online debate that isn't really necessary. And so you start worrying about, like, okay, the people that need food and place to live and need a tax break aren't going to get it because we're too busy fighting on social media. And let's try to put those things aside and focus on the work.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, what are some of the local issues that you're hearing about that you think deserve more attention in Raleigh? Because I know there's a lot happening in North Mecklenburg. And what have you been hearing that people are asking for?
Yes. So, well, we already touched on a big one, which is, how can we get around the district more quickly? And on that note, I love being in a vantage point where I can see all of the different groups work, all of the ways that different groups and sectors are coming at issues. So transportation is a piece of a bigger puzzle. Housing is a priority both in our district and across the state. It's one that we're having a lot of really good conversations about in Raleigh, I would say. Sometimes legislation sparks really good, meaningful discourse across groups. And I think that's a perfect example. Everyone agrees that housing is an issue, right? Everybody agrees that this is a problem. And many people agree that we need more housing as a solution. The question about how we get there and what mechanisms or statute we can put in place to encourage more different types of housing, that's where the meaningful debate can and should be happening. So that's another one. And then connected to that is something that I know all 3 towns in the district are working on, which is sort of how can we also get people around the district in ways that don't require cars. So looking at the work from our county system and partnering with towns for greenway connectivity and the launch of microcats and microtransit. I think all of that, there's a lot of synergy. I talked about this on the campaign trail, but I experience it now. There's so much synergy happening between Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson that in a lot of ways, it means my job is to just make sure I'm touching base with those conversations and continuing to ask, what do you need from the state to help move this forward? Because it's really lovely to see that there's some consensus from the folks who are on the ground meeting those needs in the direction that we're headed. And the state can be a partner in that. It's just a matter of making sure that the lines of communication stay open and that there are advocates. And I know that I'm not alone. We have, there are other folks from the delegation and from the region. There's some legislation dealing with Lake Norman right now that, trying to get everybody regionally connected around those issues, and some of the groups that do work like Catawba Riverkeepers. Piedmont Promise is a new coalition of environmental groups in this region. There's so many smart, thoughtful people who have been at this work for so long that in a lot of ways, my job is to just keep connecting them to each other and then elevating those voices to my colleagues in Raleigh.
Yeah, the 3 mayors of the 3 towns, we have a very close relationship, so we get along really well. And we actually have monthly breakfast where we sit down and just talk about things that are pressing issues and how we can stay connected to each other. And then we also all serve on various committees relating to transportation and development to try to stay connected. And our managers come to those meetings too. So we stay connected, and so it's good that we can give you a unified message to take back to Raleigh on all those issues, because we know that housing and zoning and how we develop these communities is going to have a huge impact on people's ability to live here and affordability of housing. And so we do need all the help we can get with that in some ways, and some ways not.
Right.
So we can talk about that.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes, I also asked that question: where does the state need to get out of the way? And so I love those conversations. This is my home too, and so I think it's really important to keep centering the voices of the people who live here and all of that. And so if I had a mission for living into government, it's that I would love for it to continue to be accessible, transparent, and open to input.
We are on to another break, so stay with us. We will be back for a message from our sponsors.
Sit tight. We'll be back with more after this on WSIC 105.9, 100.7, 1400 AM. Local starts here.
Well, the summertime heat and humidity are going to be sticking with us as we kick off a new work week. In fact, we should probably say they're on the increase. Temperatures climbing up a bit, even approaching the low 90s by the time we get to the end of the work week. Humidity going to creep up a little bit more too, but our storm chance actually coming down a little bit. We'll still have that chance for a few pop-up showers or thunderstorms pretty much each afternoon. They'll be hit or miss, not getting one every day. Just keep an eye on the weather. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Here's your WSIC community calendar. The 500 Club in Statesville presents golfing and bartending this weekend. On Friday, there is a mixology class, and on Sunday is a 2-person team 9-hole tournament. Visit the 500 Club online for more information on events, food, beverages, and tea times. Symphony in the Park is back this Saturday in Cornelius. Coming out for an evening with the Charlotte Symphony under the stars at the Bailey Road Park Band Shell. Enjoy music, food trucks, local beer and wine, children's activities, and more. The evening wraps up with a fireworks display. Symphony in the Park begins at 6 p.m. Saturday at Bailey Road Park in Cornelius. The Cookout Summer Shootout Series is at Charlotte Motor Speedway for race number 4 on Tuesday, June 24th. It is NASCAR night presented by the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Head to Gate 4 at the Speedway for their weekly promotion. Wear your favorite NASCAR driver gear on June 24th and get $5 off admission pricing. Click on charlottemotorspeedway.com for more information. The Exchange Club of Mooresville presents the annual Field the Flags July 2nd through the 5th at Lowe's YMCA. The field commemorates our veterans, service members, and first responders. The summer celebration featuring a ceremony, a concert by area favorite Blue Monday, and fireworks will be held on July 3rd. Flags are on sale now. Visit MooresvilleLKNExchange.org to make your purchase. And for more information about the Field of Flags and the summer celebration, July 3rd at Lowe's YMCA in Mooresville. To keep up with all the events happening around the community and much more, including amazing local deals, download the WSIC News app today.
All right, we're back with more from the Town of Huntersville on WSIC 105.9, 100.7, 1400 AM. Local starts here.
Welcome back to Thrive Here Live with the Town of Huntersville. I'm Mayor Christy Clark, and I'm joined by Representative Beth Helfrich. We talked about some things we might talk about during the break, but I want to, we are both educators, and so we hear a lot about that around in the district, and it's always top of mind, and school is out for summer. And so what are we seeing? You talked about some of the progress we're seeing in the budget around education, but are we seeing other things? What things can we think about when it comes to school funding or advocate for further?
Sure. I appreciate that question. I am not, sadly, on the K-12 education committee, which is what many people think of when they think about school funding, right? And I would love to talk about this a little bit more broadly, which is to say, from my perspective, really investing in education means starting in those early years. And so one encouraging thing is that there's the governor has created a bipartisan early childhood task force that is co-led by Lieutenant Governor Rachel Hunt, a Democrat, and a Republican state senator, Senator Bergen. And that group is meeting regularly to really throw out some creative solutions for navigating the child care crisis and investing in early childhood. That positions our public schools to be able to better serve our students when every kid walks in kindergarten ready. Mm-hmm. As far as K-12 goes, yes, the House budget has some promising, significant pay raises for teachers, especially beginning teachers, and reinstates master's pay. We are still falling so short of what our veteran teachers deserve. I hear from that particular population and group of folks, these are consummate professionals who have committed their careers and lives to the work of public education. And many of them haven't seen a raise in a decade. Mm-hmm. The House budget does eliminate the pay freeze that currently happens between years 15 and 25, but it's still not enough. And unfortunately, every of those 47 amendments that Democrats ran during the budget process, to run a budget amendment, you have to identify where those funds are going to come from, right? Mm-hmm. North Carolina, we have to have a balanced budget, which it's a good principle to have. But the significant funds that are designated for opportunity scholarships are untouchable. Mm-hmm. They seem to be untouchable. And we're talking about over the next biennium, over $1 trillion. I hope I just didn't misspeak. Maybe it's $1 billion. I do this every single time I start talking about this. It's an inordinate amount of money.
It's
$1 billion.
several zeros.
Several zeros. I was an English teacher, not a math teacher. But yes, we're talking about a significant amount of money that is pulled from the budget that to go to opportunity scholarships. And while I am all in favor of a robust educational landscape, I attended North Carolina public schools, went to a private college. My mom's a public school teacher. I taught at 2 different private schools. We have wonderful charters in our district. Like, all of it matters, but in terms of the funding resource, our public tax dollars should go to our public schools first.
Mm-hmm.
They really should. And so I think there are ways to continue to have a thriving educational landscape with a lot of choice baked in for families. And that is a significant burden on our state budget, where we could use those funds to adequately pay all of the professionals inside of a school building, not just teachers, but every adult who touches kids' lives every single day. And it's a matter of accessing some of those funds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, teachers, teaching assistants, speech language pathologists, social workers, even the front office staff, the admin.
We have a significant bus driver shortage right now.
Everybody.
Everyone plays a role. Everyone plays a role. And so there are many people in our General Assembly who genuinely do care about our public schools, but it's going to take some political will to rewrite that ship.
Yeah. A little political courage too, probably.
Yes.
So I know I've heard you talk a lot about making government work better for everyday people. And so what does that look like in the real terms, especially for our area?
To me, the best days are when we have successfully connected a constituent to a service that they need. So people reach out to our office every day with questions, challenges. A lot of them have tried to navigate the system, and they're at a loss for what to do next. And sometimes they end up emailing us, and that's always a good day because we can usually help. And so, number one, it's connecting the folks who live in my district to the government services that are already working in their favor. The second kind of win is when I hear directly from a constituent about a legislative issue that's coming up. So I know we say this all the time, if you're frustrated about something, contact your representative, contact your senator. I really, really value it when people do that. Sometimes I will hear from hundreds of constituents about a bill. I am every day hearing about from constituents about the various immigration bills that are on the docket in our state, or that we've voted on in our state legislature. I heard from so many constituents about SB 50, which eliminated permits for concealed carry. That is now on the governor's desk. We'll see what happens. But there are times when I hear from one constituent about a bill that I've been trying to digest or understand what it means. And just hearing from one person about, well, this is what this would do to my profession, or this is why I really would love for you to support this bill. It matters. I take that input very seriously. So when my constituents feel like they can share with me how they feel about an issue and know that I'm going to listen and receive it, even if I don't end up voting in that way, I promise I take that input seriously and I weigh it as part of my decision. And then the third win is involving people in that process themselves. So not just being on the receiving end of that input and then sharing it in committee or behind the scenes or with my colleagues, but if I can get someone to actually come up and talk themselves. So we had a coaches advocacy day recently where I had sponsored a bill. There was a companion bill in the Senate that would use some of the sports betting money to provide a stipend for our high school athletic coaches, many of whom are leaving for other states where they're making six figures. And we invited coaches across and athletic directors from across North Carolina to come and advocate and meet with their reps. And it was budget day, so it was a it was a tough day to be able to spend as much time with them as I wanted. But I did get to connect with everybody and hear directly from a couple of folks from Huff, and it's a joy to connect people with that process themselves, so that they can come up and say with their own voice, this is why this matters so much to me, and thank you for listening. And I like to remind people that the only time to offer public comment on a bill is when it's in a committee. Mm-hmm. And so, when people reach out to me early and I know that they really care about a specific issue, I try to let them know when that bill is headed to committee and invite them to come up and speak for themselves. And that has happened. And to me, that's government working, trying to amplify real people's voices who are living their real lives and connect them to the decision makers is and will always be a priority for me. I would like to make government a little bit more boring, a little like more service oriented, because so much of it is. But we don't hear about that piece, which is okay. People don't need to know or necessarily want to know all of the gears that are turning all of the time. But they should feel like the folks that they've elected to serve them are doing that hard work, and that if they have an opinion about how it's going, or if they have a concern about how it's going, that person's going to turn around and listen to them too.
Yeah, that's really good. So you mentioned your newsletter and also getting in touch with you. What is the best way to get on your newsletter email list and get in touch with you for those people who are listening?
Yep, probably one and the same. My official legislative email is Beth.Helfrich. It's easier than it sounds. HELFRICH at ncleg.gov, ncleg.gov. You can also Google me. I am the only Beth in the General Assembly. So even if you just remember Beth and you look up North Carolina House, you'll find me. If it's a fancy picture that my husband jokingly told me looked like an 80s PTA mom, that would be my official legislative portrait. So if you come across that one where I'm wearing the little badge, that's my official page. Yes. And the email address is on there, and you can sign up for my newsletter that way too.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's a great way to stay in touch with people, and hopefully you don't get too many emails, but we love to hear from our constituents. So
yes, we never too many emails. And the other thing I'll say is that I've had 3 town halls this spring. All had folks showing up to hear from me. I had the first one in Cornelius at a bakery, one at Neoteric Brewing in Huntersville, and then the first one was at Cocotte. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm saying that right. I am not a French speaker, just like I'm not a mathematician. I'm going to look up surely it's billion.
Yeah.
Sure. Cocotte, and then a town hall at a community conversation at Ada Jenkins Center in Davidson. So we did those monthly. I will be doing many more of those. I love the chance to meet with constituents face to face and engage in real conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Representative Helfrich, for being with us today. We learned a lot, and we'll check that number because I'm not a mathematician either, so it's got some zeros on it. Thank you for joining Hunters Thrive Here Live with the Town of Huntersville, and we'll be back next week at the same time.
Statesville, Mooresville, North Charlotte.
Have you taken the DESCO challenge? DESCO is where the professional goes for electrical supplies.
My name is Ashley. I just redid the light.